Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Women's Maximum Fitness Podcast. My guest today is Emily Miller. She is a NPC figure competitor, up and coming, and I believe going for her pro card this year. So if you give her a
Yes.
follow on Instagram, beautiful physique, just everything flows so nicely, lovely structure. And well, first of all, how you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's
Yeah.
a good morning. I got up and did my fasted cardio this morning. Had my off day breakfast, which isn't the best, but it's enough for right now.
So you're in, how far are you into your prep right now?
So I'm doing two shows. So I'm gonna do Dallas Europa on June 19th. So we're right around like 9-ish weeks out from that. And then so I'll qualify for Universe Nationals and I'll do that show on July 1st. So about 11 weeks or so out from that show.
Perfect. So usually my first question is some background information, how you got started in bodybuilding, some of your athletic background from when you were a child and how that transitioned. Um,
Sure.
One of the things that I was saying to you before we got started, so I feel like there's two types of guests that I have on the show, and it's purposeful. So the people that have been in the bodybuilding industry for a period of time and are sort of the giant shoulders that the younger generation that's coming up are standing on. But I also like having people like you who are up and coming, just kind of wowed me with a physique, but sort of a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon type of a thing. I am friends with John and Renee Jewett, and then when Olivia Gravengard was on, she had mentioned that she is working with your husband Luke Miller,
Yes.
and so I started following him, and then that immediately led me to you. And so
Uh-huh.
uh, another thing that I do want to talk about with you today is social media, and I do feel like you create this path of people that you follow when you start following somebody, because you find all those people that they're connected to, and your first choices are super important because they are going to lead you down the path to either your goals with whatever physique or health you're looking for, or spinning your wheels. And that so I do want to talk about social media as well, but let's start with sports you played as a kid and what led you to this
Yeah,
bodybuilding journey.
of course. So as a kid, I feel like I've always been like averagely athletic, nothing crazy, but I was in gymnastics for a little bit, did some like cheerleading like in my elementary days. And then I did a little bit of dance here and there.
Okay.
I actually played golf, which whether that is athletic is kind of a debate. um, and then once I graduated high school, I started in some jujitsu. So I did that for a while. That's definitely an athletic endeavor for sure.
Yeah.
You realize that you have muscle that you didn't even know you had before whenever you start doing that. And I actually was teaching little kids jujitsu, and I had a parent that she was telling me how she did figure shows.
Right.
And that was, I think, early 2016.
Okay.
And so, I was like, oh, well, maybe that would be something that I may, be good at. Maybe I'm interested. And so I had her shoot me over her meal plan that she was currently on. And, I was eating my typical college meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, who knows what it was going to be.
Right.
Um, and I was like, there's no way that I can do this. Like, there's no way that I'd be able to get in 6 meals a day and everything to be so specific.
Right.
And so for about a month or so, I kind of put it off. And then she came back and was like, oh, are you thinking any more of doing the bodybuilding shows? And so I started thinking about it a little more. And then I ended up moving to Biloxi, Mississippi, that following month. and there was a gym close to where I lived that was really cool. It was called Ironworks. So it was my first, like, really real gym experience. And I remember walking in there and I was super nervous and I didn't know how to use anything, right?
Okay.
And so I kind of got used to that environment. And so I decided to hire my first coach and do my first show. So I had been training for, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 months before I decided to really dive off into a prep. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I competed for the first time in October of 2016. I did pretty well. I got second place in figure out of like 8 girls. And then I did a second show about 4 weeks later. And in that 4 weeks, I didn't do so well with my meal planning. Like, it was kind of all over the place. Um, and then I think I placed third place in that show. And then I took like a month or so off to kind of bulk back up and then jump back into another prep for a show in April and then a show in June of 2017.
Okay.
And I feel like my preps weren't very strict.
Yeah.
I feel like I had a cheat meal every month or so that wasn't guided. So I would just kind of binge eat when
Yeah.
I did. And it was really poor and planned. Um, and so after that, that's when I decided I actually got accepted into NP school, which I knew was going to be pretty challenging. And so at that point, I kind of decided, no, I'm done competing for a while. I'm going to take the time, I'm going to grow. And that's kind of what I've been doing since 2019. At the end of 2019, I decided that I was going to get on a prep. And so I started it. And it was kind of in the midst of my first job as a nurse practitioner. So it wasn't the best timing. And I, came to realize that about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 weeks into the prep, I was having a lot of anxiety around food, like having to restrict myself. And so I just called it. And I'm really glad that I did, because I feel like this package that I'm about to bring to the stage is going to be mind blowing for myself just to see the changes that I've made
Yeah.
since I was on stage in 2017.
So
So
it's really interesting to me. Part of the reason that I always ask about athletic background is because there is usually there's specific sports that are involved, but some sort of an athletic background for someone to do well in bodybuilding because, and you probably know about epigenetics. Scott Stevenson talks about epigenetics all the time.
yeah.
And it's like planting seeds that you don't really
Uh-huh.
see, environmentally, and then, physically, sports, and then genetics and all that stuff. So it's really interesting to me. It's the same with Janet Liu. When she was on, she talked about that too, being athletic her whole life. And she literally got her pro card within like 2-3 months of competing,
Right.
obviously needing less muscle for bikini. But so when you first competed, you had only been training a couple of months, and normally you would probably say to somebody, not the best idea because you want to have that muscle base, right? But you did pretty well because of your athletic background. uh,
Hmm.
what was your weight for that first show, and how tall are you, and what are you going for now?
Yeah, so I am I always thought I was 5'2", and then NPC told me that I was 5'1.5".
Okay.
Going with it. I think I started my prep at 123 pounds,
Okay.
and I was on stage at like 117. So I didn't, lose a whole lot. I'm
Yeah.
actually leaner now in my prep than I ever was on stage in 2017, just because I was skinny, didn't have a lot of muscle development.
Yeah.
And I guess because I was more athletic, I had a decent basis.
Yes.
Um, but it just wasn't developed at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was not a huge weight loss, but I mean, I definitely leaned down in the midsection a little bit, coming through those preps. And I feel like it set me up for a decent base to kind of start bulking at least.
Yeah.
Because my calories were a little bit lower, my metabolism was kind of trash. And so we started to, increase my food and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. So what is your weight at about now? So how much, I'm curious what the muscle gain
Yes.
was.
So
Yeah.
I started this prep at either, I think it was 145 or 146.
Okay.
And this morning I weighed 129.6. And
Okay.
that's my lowest point so far. I've hit that a couple times over the past week.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to, I think there's not a goal stage weight that I have specifically. It's more of the look, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'm thinking I have probably a solid like 5 to 7 pounds to pull off. Probably closer to the 7.
Okay. I think that's really important for women to understand too, that their goal weight, probably their goal body type probably weighs more than what they think. I
Yeah.
know with my age, growing up, it was like in the 90s, it was about being skinny, And so women my age tend to think like, oh, well, I remember when, I weighed 115 pounds or 125 pounds. And they think that's what it's just, when you start training, that muscle just weighs more. And someone might look at
Yes.
your physique and be like, oh my gosh, she looks like she weighs 150 pounds because of the
Uh-huh.
muscle. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's really important because people will pick, like you said, you're not, even for this stage, you're not looking for a specific weight because that's not what the goal is. The goal is a physique look and being
Yes.
open to the fact that you're going to gain weight, not be
Uh-huh.
117
And
pounds.
sometimes, and I feel like, in the sport, that can be tricky in itself, is putting yourself in the right mindset to say, okay, this is my time to grow.
Mhm.
And I am going to see the scale weight come up, and it's probably going to be higher than it was ever before. And that's part of it. But I do find that, some people say, oh, preps are so hard because, you're tired, you're going in 5 million different directions with balancing things and your food's low. But you wake up every morning and you see a little bit of progress, right? But in the off season, you wake up and you just feel kind of fluffy, and you continue to feel a little bit fluffy, and you may or may not see those day-to-day changes like you do in the on prep seasons. So yeah,
Yeah.
that can be definitely tricky, and getting your mind away from, oh, a scale weight is the big goal here,
Yeah.
can be difficult for some people.
Well, and too that when that fat is covering the muscle. I mean, sometimes, especially with social media, people will be like, "Oh, you did you lose muscle?" And you're like, "No, it's just hiding."
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's definitely something that you have to mentally prepare for both ways.
Yeah.
To get on a prep, you have to be mentally prepared for all the sacrifice, but then in the off season, you have to be mentally prepared to love your body for the season that it's in. So,
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think that's so important for people. And it could take several bulks and cuts for you to achieve the amount of muscle mass, whether you're competing or not, that you want to walk around with. There are all these seasons, and you got to do all of them because you can't forever bulk and you can't stay lean and grow muscle, especially for
correct. Yeah, and for your health's sake too,
yeah.
because both ends of the spectrum kind of pull you in different ways. So it's important to, take some time to bulk. And even if you're not going on a full prep, taking that time to get your insulin sensitivity back, and to maybe lower your blood pressure a little bit, or better your digestion with a mini cut. So I think those are, important things in play.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your training. I feel like I'm not going to say, because I mean, everyone trains a little bit different, but I feel like talking about your training is going to give the listeners and watchers a good idea of what it takes to put on muscle for any type of woman who is trying to build some muscle.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my training when I first started out, was I did just basically like a one body part split. So I would go in and I would do back day and then do shoulder day, leg day, chest day, arm day, etc. And so I was training, I mean, 6 days a week with an off day, even through those first preps. And I mean, I was running myself into the ground. I was fatigued all the time. Wasn't optimizing that time in the gym.
Yeah.
And then I started with a different coach in 2018 who kind of sent me for lack of a better term, just standard workout, something that other people probably had too. It wasn't specifically for me. It was just kind of a general, oh, this is what you do.
Okay.
And so I kind of took that and turned it into my own thing. And then I started with my husband, who's Luke Miller, No Switch Fitness.
Yep.
And he's been a pretty big guide as well, just because he has a background in, physiology and exercise science and all of those things. So whenever I started, allowing him to coach me, we really tailored my workout plan to me and what I needed to grow. So of course, being figure, my biggest focus was my shoulders, obviously. And then I needed personally to just kind of widen my lats.
Yeah.
And so I currently do a 3-day one-off and then 2-day one-off split, running through pull, push, legs. So for example, I'll do pull, push, legs off, and then I'll do pull, push, off, and then start my next 3-day cycle with legs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so my push days, I really focus on shoulders more so than chest. So I'll have like 1 or 2 like smaller chest movements in those days. But the primary focus is shoulders with a couple tricep movements on the end. As far as rep ranges go, and there's a lot of science around it about what's the most optimal,
Right.
rep range. Do we leave reps in reserve? Do we go to failure? I personally have seen, just anecdotally, the most growth with pushing to failure for every single set that I do, every single movement. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around, oh, well, I know I have 1 rep left
Yeah.
and I'm not going to do that one. It says 1 rep in reserve, so I'm just not going to do it. But
Yeah.
how do I really know that I only had 1 left, not 2
Yeah.
or 3?
Yes.
Because, you should be pushing yourself kind of to that maximum point.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very subjective because, a lot of those studies, or even when you're training with someone who pushes you, you're going to end up finding that what you thought was your failure point actually was 2, 3 reps in reserve because you've got somebody screaming at you to go. So
yes,
yeah, it's very hard to measure.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I go in to every set, even on the days that I'm really tired, just, okay, here's my logbook. My logbook says that I did 100 pounds for 10 reps. Well, now I'm going to try to get 11.
Yeah.
And, if I match it and everything through the day stress-wise has been increased, then I know, okay, well, that was good. Let's try again next week.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever you go into your training, that's also something that as far as stress, throughout the day, are you training at the end of your day? Because if you are, have you been hydrating all day? Have you gotten all your meals in? Has it been super stressful at work? Because those are all things that are going to impact the quality
Yeah.
of your workout session that day.
Yeah. I believe that water is like the hydration part is so huge.
Uh-huh.
I remember just a couple of weeks ago, I think Olivia Gravengard had posted that she downs a 24-ounce water bottle before every workout, plus, her, just to make sure, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And
it's important.
it's so huge. Yeah.
It is. I know I was at work a couple weeks ago and I have those like giant Ozarka water bottles that I bring with me because I'm, in and out of patient rooms all day. So it's important to have something big at my desk so I don't have to constantly refill. And one of the MDs that I work with came by and he was like, "How big is that water bottle? That's a lot of water." And I said, "Yeah, whenever I'm here on my shift, I go through 2 of these in
Right.
my shift." And he was just mesmerized at that.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that, like your average person who isn't in bodybuilding,
Yeah.
their water intake is probably very, very subpar.
Yeah, and it's funny because, with my client intake form, I see people a lot who are like, "Oh, I drink a ton of water. I have a 40-ounce bottle and I drink one every day." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Hey,
Like,
well,
yeah.
the bare I always tell people that the bare minimum is half your body weight in ounces,
Mhm.
and I don't think that should include, your protein shakes and your coffees
Right.
and your
Yeah, just pure water. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's a start. And like 100 ounces is a pretty, like you're covered, but yeah, tend to go
Uh-huh.
for a gallon or if it's hotter or
Yeah,
again, obviously before training.
sweating and all of that matters. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, where were we headed? I keep cutting you off.
Okay.
Training.
Yeah.
So So do you one of the things that I noticed, and I feel like training is it's not like you can just figure it out. This is something that I remember from Olivia's conversation too. It's not something that you can just figure out and just do for the rest of your life. Things are constantly evolving with bodybuilding. You're trying to bring up weak parts. Different parts respond differently, and that's what is great about just being consistent with a program is you can figure out what's working for you. A lot of people want to know what they should do, and the first question is, well, what have you been, what have you been
Yeah.
doing, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that I was curious about, and what I have noticed too, it's a lot easier to go to failure if you keep your rep ranges in that 8 to 12 rep range, I think. And I
Mhm.
do like doing back off sets as well sometimes, but they
Yes.
are, I feel like, very fatiguing and harder to gauge if you're taking them to that failure point. Would you agree with that?
So the way that most of my movements are set up are kind of like that. So I do my top heavy set always first.
Yeah.
So that'll be anywhere from 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 reps, depending on the movement itself.
Yeah.
So I do a like 2 to 3 warm ups, and then I'll go into that top set. And usually my failure range, I'll try to gauge the weight so that failure range is somewhere in between that.
Yeah.
Now, if I sometimes, especially if we're doing a new movement, let's say that I got to 12, but I know that my failure point is at 13.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, "Well, do you go ahead and do that 13 even though the paper says it should be between 8 and 12." And
Right.
I do. So I'll push it to that 13. And that lets me know next week, okay, I need to bump up the weight so that way I can get more in my range.
Yeah.
As far as my back offsets, I still bring those to failure as well.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of based off of how that first set went.
Yeah.
So let's say, shoulder press. I pull out the 65s and my rep range was between 8 and 10 and I got exactly 9.
Yeah.
So I'll back off, about maybe 10, 15 pounds. And if my rep range is between 12 and 15 and I get 13, 14, then I kind of, can gauge that I'm exactly where I should be.
Yeah.
And that sets me up for the following weeks to come as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm pushing those rep ranges, then I can increase weight. If I'm still in that rep range with my set, then I'm probably going to stay at the same weight. Um, I feel like for me, pushing to failure is just a natural response
Yeah.
to training. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Some people have to put the effort in to really push to failure.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the times it's a mindset thing and accurately trying to gauge your weight based off of
Yeah.
what you've seen you have been able to get in the past. Does that
Well,
make sense?
yeah, and I think that I want to say two things. I wanted to ask you about when was it when you started working with Luke that you started keeping a logbook? And what was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, I think it's super important to sort of break those rules. You have a rep range. But, because I know a lot of people that if they see a workout that doesn't have a rep range, but it just says 10 reps, they're gonna stop at 10 reps, and that might not
Yeah.
be their failure point. So breaking the rules of that and taking notes allows
Hmm.
one to know, like you said, next time, or even if you're gonna maybe try again and say, you know what, I am gonna try a heavier weight and get within that rep range, even though I just probably, and see what I got. Maybe I only get 6. Now I'm not even in my rep range, but I know for next time,
Hmm.
that's probably the weight that I need to do my top set with. So,
Yeah.
so when did you start logging?
So I started logging. It's actually been kind of recent. I would say maybe the past year and a half of training. So
Okay.
before that, I was just trying to keep up with everything in my head. So specifically for my top sets, my back off sets were kind of like, oh yeah, I think this is what I got last week. They weren't really measured. So who knows if I was even increasing those.
Yeah.
Um, and then, just to be the most optimal and sufficient at my training, that's whenever I was like, I need to start logging this and
Yeah.
really paying attention to if I'm progressing.
Yeah.
And I think a logbook is very important for that reason, but it also tells you, am I not improving this movement? Does it need to be switched out?
Yeah.
Um, because like you said, it's ever evolving. Your workout plan is not, you're doing the same thing for the next 10 years.
Right.
So one movement, may start to be fatiguing and causing issues in your other movements that come after. And it's important that you address that issue and then you change to a different movement if that's the case. And I feel like the logbook will really tell you that because if you stayed at the same weight and you're either getting the same number of reps or it's decreasing or the quality of the set seems to be decreasing, that it's important that you rotate through.
Yeah.
And I know Luke, he likes to, especially on bigger movements that deal with like the lower back and the legs. So, like RDLs, leg press, squat, um, deadlifts.
Yeah.
So those things he'll rotate them out sometimes on an like every other week basis
Yeah.
to kind of help decrease that fatigue drive.
Yeah. John Meadows just was, I don't know if it was just or I was watching one of his YouTube videos and he was
Mhm.
talking about that too, that he has an order of how he designs his workout as far as like an activation movement. And this is coming from someone who is older. And so that's part of the reason why I follow him. You know, because that's how my training has changed as well. It's like I have to be more, I mean, obviously we're always being injury preventative, but
Sure.
a younger body is going to be less prone to injury than an older body. So, anyways, he has an activation movement, then he usually has a compound movement, and then there's more of a pump movement, and then a stretch movement.
Yep.
And he repeats that after, like, you have the 3 days, and then he'll have another 3 days doing something like push pull legs or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then he'll usually pull out that compound movement so that your
Yes.
heavy stressor it's fascinating. Um, I think when I first got, involved in bodybuilding, I was thinking a lot more about the nutrition side of it, but the
Mhm.
thinking, oh, training isn't nearly as detailed, but it
Yes.
it is. There's so many things to learn. There's so many nuances, and just you can really put together something that's customized for yourself if you do a lot
Mhm.
of research.
Yeah, and I think that's a big misconception, about the sport in general is that nutrition is king. It's the most important thing. It's the thing that I need to focus on. As long as I'm in the gym and I'm pushing weight, I should be good, right?
Stimulate
Um,
the muscle. I hear that a lot. You just need to stimulate the muscle.
yeah, exactly. And I think that just kind of being in the industry and hearing like bigger names and people talk about, their workout plans with so and so. I think that's a big misconception for just, I mean, coaches in general too. They think, oh, well, I'll customize their nutrition plan for them, but then I'll send them this workout. It should work for them. And then sometimes, that client doesn't get any feedback on those movements. They don't get to have a follow-up discussion on, oh, this is working for me, this is not.
Yeah.
Um, and that coach is specifically just so focused on nutrition and supplementation that they kind of forget about the exercise side of things. It's just as important in my opinion, and can be just as challenging sometimes too, to kind of find those movements and fine tune your daily workout routine.
Well, and trying to figure out what your level of intensity is, because, that's
Mhm.
that I see. I feel like with, with, if you see in general women in the gym, you see women not pushing themselves hard enough. And if you see
Uh-huh.
guys in the gym, you see them lifting too heavy weight with bad form. So,
Yes.
it's just, I mean, not to be rude, but I mean,
No, it's
I
true.
I notice when I look around. So you want to make sure that your form is correct. And that's, I feel like, where your beginnings are supposed to be, figuring
Mhm.
out, what's working for you, what you connect with, full range of motion, and then getting stronger at it and learning how to increase that intensity. It is a process.
Uh-huh, exactly. And I think that's kind of touching on the social media aspect I know we'll kind of talk about later is, finding those people who have found that balance between working very hard at what they do,
Yeah.
but doing it with intent and not with, slinging the weights around to just try and look good or beat their logbook, even though their form is awful. And I think here, I've noticed just here in the past, I don't know, maybe 5 to 6 months that I think bodybuilding is kind of trying to push its way into the more intent and like more focused, more intellectual side of training and managing everything versus just getting in there and grunting through your workout. And I'm hoping that it continues to really push that into that direction in the next like year or so.
Yeah, I think that, if the more that we can showcase those people that are paving that direction,
Mhm.
like John is bridging that gap between the science and the in the trenches, I think is what he said
Uh-huh.
with bodybuilding. Um, so that information is more available, because I just feel like, um, it could be a shorter journey to the look that you want to achieve if you are able to take the right path.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women too, it's like, if you just want to lose body fat, it's, honestly, that's a lot of just a good diet that's high in protein, because you're going to hold
Mhm.
on to your lean tissue. And I mean, even doing steady state cardio is going to get that body fat off. But changing the shape of your body and the structure of your body, people turn to, HIIT workouts, or,
Yes.
it's just crazy stuff that I think if I did right now, I would really get injured trying
Uh-huh.
to do some
Yeah.
of these crazy workouts, holding dumbbells and jumping around and all this other type of stuff. So there's a method depending on what you're trying to achieve. Um,
There is. And I feel like in the general population, there's a specific look that a lot of women, want. And they think that, oh, it's just I need to lose weight. I need to lose weight.
right.
And but truly that look, only comes with some muscle development as well.
Yeah.
And so and getting that information out there that yeah, you need to sure you may need to lose a little bit of weight,
Yeah.
but you also need to start training with weights,
Yeah.
not just doing a bunch of cardio to get some muscle development.
Yes.
So you have some shape and size to those muscle bellies, and overall it makes you look leaner and toner.
Yeah.
You know, people always say, "Oh, I just want to be toned," and they're doing a bunch of cardio and they're lifting like curling 5 pound dumbbells.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, that misconception, just in the general population, just kills me.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's out
it's
there.
like the tone look. It's the same route. It just takes less time.
Uh-huh.
So,
Exactly.
Um, so I think I had talked to you a little bit earlier. It's something that I had been thinking about over the past few months since I've been doing the podcast, because,
Mhm.
and this is where you are involved. I just feel like there's this influx of younger competitors that are coming up who have, at first I thought, okay, so I do know that some of these girls are using performance enhancing drugs just because, not necessarily can you always gauge that on someone's physique, but you can see side effects, right?
Mhm.
Or see or hear side effects. And
Yes.
so, to me, I was thinking, it's frustrating because, you have a lot of the pros who've been in the industry for a long time, and they put in a lot of time building this base before they started using any type of
Yes.
drugs, if they have. And that's a whole other, it's a very large topic, and no judgment or anything like that.
Mhm.
But what I think is that, one, a lot of the younger group that's coming up, I do feel like people are using drugs sooner, maybe more. Who knows? You don't know exactly. But I also feel like, and this is where we get to the social media aspect. Social media is, it's wonderful and it's awful because there's so much information out there, and because you see someone has a specific body type, you would think, oh, I need to do what that person is doing in order to achieve that body type. And that is definitely not necessarily the case. Like what we had
Mhm.
just said, if you want to achieve the type of physique that has more shape to it, it's, someone's going to train the same way that you are training, or the same way that some of these girls who have more muscle are training. Um,
Uh-huh.
but if you don't add any performance enhancing drugs, or you don't do it for as long as they're doing it, or you don't do it quite as intensely, you are going to achieve the body that you're looking for. So, long roundabout way, I think it's super important who you follow on social media. Those choices are very important because you have people that are putting out, I honestly want to say, correct information,
Uh-huh.
and other people that are putting out, they're genetically blessed, or it's like, Evie said to me, a couple of podcasts ago, she's like, I don't post my training because it's so boring. And I was like, people need to know. People need to know that's how
They
you achieve
do.
your body.
Yes. Yes. And I guess I'll, touch on PEDs some.
Yeah.
So I feel like just bodybuilding in general is it's a long race. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
And as far as PED usage goes, sometimes can make it look like a sprint.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you that I'm hearing of people younger and younger, like 18, 19, that, oh, well, I'm starting my first cycle of drugs and I've only been training for a couple months now.
Yeah.
And so, but honestly, in doing that, you're setting yourself up to kind of get further and further and further. You're going to have to use a little bit more and a little bit more, and eventually, especially as a female, you are going to have side effects. You're going to see a deepening in your voice. You're going to see hair growth in places that you probably otherwise wouldn't have, clitoral enlargement and sensitivities, just like bone structure changes over time.
Yeah.
Like these are things that I feel aren't portrayed on social media. You see that girl that's 22 and she's huge, huge shoulders, tiny waist, like, lines chiseled everywhere. But then you don't see that her voice is 2 octaves lower than it used to be. You don't see that she's having to shave and, her chest. And it can be misconstrued,
Yeah.
because of unfortunate, PED usage or overuse or misuse of the such. I think as far as getting far in the sport, PEDs aren't necessarily you have to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
kind of semi have to if you want to go to certain lengths, right?
Yes.
There have been people out there that can win their pro card without it. Do they have good genetics and a good basis? Probably.
Yeah.
They put in the time, they put in the work, they had the good base, the good genes, and they got their pro card without having to do anything. Um, but then you have people who, it's been 5 years of solid training, solid nutrition, and they just need that little bump, and that's okay. That's no judgment. I completely think that's necessary,
Yeah.
if they want to go further. But for anyone that's just getting into the sport, um, like I said before, it's a long race, and I think to do it safely and
Yeah.
to keep your health in mind, it's very important that you do put the time in for adequate training and focusing on, quality training, quality foods, um, increasing your foods over a time, getting into that fluffy stage, doing a couple mini cuts to, you know, develop your physique before you jump off into the huge ocean of PEDs, because there's all kinds of stuff out there. And
Yeah.
only for females especially, there's only a certain number of things that you should be doing,
Yeah.
um, to help mitigate those sides.
Yeah.
So, and then social media is kind of blows that up and misconstrues it, and people just don't see the other side of the picture, essentially. So,
One of the things that I love about like what you're doing, what your husband is doing, what John Jewett is doing is I really love that emphasis on teaching people how to train, what you're doing, talking about diet as well, and just really hammering home these two. It's the base of how you change your physique. It's the base of how you, get healthy.
yeah.
And talking about that, it's like, because like you said, people can take, excuse me, people can take whatever, you can add drugs to something and have shit training and somebody is going to grow. That
Mhm.
coupled with, someone who hasn't really ever trained before, they're going to have that newbie growth as well. So, you
Right.
see somebody put on a whole bunch of sides right at the beginning. um, when you start throwing all these variables in and you're not calculating about stuff, like you said, building a base
Mhm.
by learning how to train, learning how, what kind of diet works out for you and everything else. I just feel like people they're playing all their cards at one,
Mhm.
in one hand, and then what happens is, like you said, you just end up having to add more drugs because you never learn. I forget, it was I don't remember exactly. I think it was Patrick Moore talking on Fuad's podcast, and he was saying how oh, no, it was who is the who is the Australian, I can picture him now.
Huh.
um
I'm not sure.
um anyways, he was talking about how different it felt the first time that he took, because he had been training for 4 or 5 years and built this
Uh-huh.
base. And he's like, it almost masked how different exercises felt where he wasn't normally connecting with them. You know what I mean? So it's like I
Yeah.
said, you're like jumping ahead before you're even learning how
Uh-huh.
to connect with the muscle. So,
Yes, and I
um,
think that's a big issue, especially with men, is, you don't realize that steroid use equals, muscular hypertrophy, but your tendons and your ligaments,
yeah,
they need time to catch up. And so if you're training poorly, you're slinging weight, you're taking a bunch of tests on top of other kinds of compounds, your muscles are getting larger, but you're putting so much stress on that, then you're going to tear something. And it happens so often.
yep,
And of course, sometimes it's just going to happen, right?
right,
But sometimes it's preventable, and it's kind of painful to watch, whatever it is. It's like, oh, well, if you just wouldn't have,
yeah,
tried to muscle that out, then you would have been okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's really important, and that training, that quality training, is a cornerstone, before you do dive off into PED usage. And I guess I'll be transparent. So just for, anyone that can kind of relate. So I trained for a solid 2.5, 3 years before I ever, decided to use any PED.
Yeah.
And everything that I have used up until now has been the most minimum effective dosage that I could get, just because I don't want any of the side effects, and I do want just enough to kind of help push me through
Right.
without, you know, being detrimental. And so I think that's an important too that thing to know is more is not necessarily better. You
Yeah.
know, you can get away with just the most minimum dosage there is.
Yeah.
And if that works, just do that. Don't risk your health
Right. Well,
to
it's kind
take
of like it's like with the training, you have to be consistent and do something and see how it's working for you before you decide
Mhm.
that you're going to change something. So,
Right.
um, I actually had a episode that I did with Jamie Pinder that it was early on in the podcast, and I felt like it was so much about drugs that I wasn't sure that I wanted to put it out there yet because I didn't want that to be like, hey, this is what this podcast is about.
Right.
I've never edited the episode and put it out, and I definitely want to do that. But she talks about that a lot, basically, minimum dose, doing that and seeing, in 2 weeks, you should be able to notice if it's working for you or not. Then you decide if, then that's good. Then you can stick with
Yep.
that versus,
Having
uh,
to increase it. Yeah. And I think people, have, especially men who, they just, I already have testosterone, so I just want to increase it as much as I can.
yeah,
But then just because, as far as men goes, they already have the hair and all of that and their deep voice, they don't have to worry about that. But then you have to worry about other things such as, prostate enlargement and cancerous tumors and, things that can go more so on the inside of the body that may not physically portray until later in the game. And it's kind of too late for that.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I'm all about minimum effective dosing and then taking, your multivitamin and your vitamin D and your and acetylcysteine and everything to take care of yourself while you're doing it, and then monitoring your blood work. That's a big one too. Making sure your liver enzymes are intact and your cholesterol is not through the roof and your HDL is, as high as it can be while using PEDs. There's so much about it that I think people don't realize. They're just like, oh, steroids, I'm
yeah,
gonna use them to get big, and they don't pay attention to all the support work that should come into that, such as the blood work and everything.
yeah,
Which I think is why doing it so young and so new into the game can be detrimental.
yeah,
And then I also stress finding a coach who truly cares about not only your growth as a bodybuilder, but that cares about your health,
yeah,
because there are too many people out there that only care about your growth as a bodybuilder because it pushes up their image versus, really caring about, well, is this making your liver super inflamed or is this enlarging your heart? What are your blood pressures and that kind of thing.
yeah. I think that's a tough one as well because coaches want to look like they're good coaches. And, again, I keep mentioning these names, but they're also really great people to be following because these are people that are putting out good information
Uh,
um, in a caring manner. And, that's something that John Meadows had said too. It's like, um, if you can find a coach that can prep clients naturally and make natural clients look good, then you know that they know what they're doing because anybody can throw drugs, any type of a drug cycle, and it masks so much,
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. And I feel like that's kind of a sore subject too for, a lot of people. They don't like to hear that.
No.
Because they want to think that their coach is the best and, oh, well, they care. But it's like, oh, you're taking stuff that you shouldn't be. And, it can be a hard conversation to have too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really important I like being responsible and trying to educate on this podcast as well, because I do feel like, I'm almost 45, and I think that if I started bodybuilding, like actually shooting for competing when I was like 34, 35 years old. And
Mhm.
I feel like knowing who I am now and who I didn't know who I was when I was younger, if I had started bodybuilding when I was in my 20s, I think I would have been one of those people who took drugs and was irresponsible with them. So, as it's the mom in me that says, "Hey, I'm going to do my best to like have people, have longevity in this sport." Like you said, when you're 20, people like I didn't think I wanted children when I was younger either. And as somebody who has endometriosis and I was diagnosed and my doctor had said you might not be able to have children, and that was when I was 25. And then I was like, oh, so if somebody came to you and said, hey, you're definitely not going to be able to have children, or there's like a really good chance
Mhm.
if you do this, it might change your mind if you actually knew that it was going to make the difference between having a family and not having a family.
Right,
So,
and it takes that option away
yeah,
from, even if it's something that you don't think that you want right now, and maybe you won't, you don't want for 10 years, it just takes the option away
yeah,
completely,
yeah,
which can be something that you realize later that's an issue, you
yeah.
know? Mhm.
I think it's really important, and I see this in you and your husband and John, is to be passionate about training and the sport and the evolution of it and the evolution of it with yourself so that you can find ways to stick with it and modify. And however, as you get older, if you don't love it, then you need to figure out something else that you are passionate about because you only get to live once, and
Right.
that risk is, I people always say, for a plastic trophy or whatever, it's not worth it. And I just feel like people have so many talents that they don't know, or so many things that they haven't discovered. There's always something that you are going to be able to, put a lot of passion into. It doesn't
Mm,
have to be something just because you admire it with somebody else.
right, yeah, and, this isn't NFL football, we don't make millions and millions, so in bodybuilding, it literally takes from every like facet of your life. It takes
Mhm.
from your time, your energy, your family. And I actually just made an Instagram post about passion yesterday, and about how it's important you know, to yourself, and you owe it to yourself to follow your passions and your dreams. But bodybuilding is one that I feel like from the very beginning, you need to decide, is this something that I am either going to completely give my all to,
Yeah,
or is it something that I'm just going to do, to keep myself healthy and I just to have fun, and enjoy it. And I think sometimes that's kind of a struggle for people, to differentiate between, is this just something that's fun for me?
yeah,
Or is this something that I plan on, competing in a national show? I plan on getting my pro card, and I plan on continuously competing in pro shows to eventually get to the Olympia. You have to have this real inside discussion with yourself,
yeah,
because it pulls from everything else.
yeah,
And everyone around you kind of has to conform to it. And it's easy for me because my husband, this is we've both decided that we're all in.
yeah. That's your life.
So our household, it's easy. We don't keep
Yeah.
snacks in the pantry. And my dad came over the other day and he was like, "You have this huge fridge and nothing in it." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's just what we do." But
Right.
it takes away time to do other things that I do enjoy,
Yeah.
such as traveling and spending time with my family. And of course, it's important to fit all those things in. But nevertheless, bodybuilding is sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
So it's a big commitment. And for those who just want to do it to enjoy it, definitely do it. But also do it in the confinements of enjoyment. You don't have to go and, take a bunch of PEDs, because eventually that's going to make it a lifelong decision instead of just something that you did for a little bit of time because you had fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people can follow people like yourself and other people that are, I think about that with John and Renee too. They're 100% on all the time.
Yeah.
And it's all about perspective. You can look at this person and say, what can I glean from this? What tips can I learn? How can I improve my training? And enhance my own life, and
Mhm.
I can still have a love and a passion for the support and for the sport and support the people in it. And I also feel like whenever someone achieves a goal, whether it's, like it's somebody in bodybuilding, or, somebody becomes, something with singing or music or sports or whatever it is, achieving a goal is inspirational to anyone, whether they think that that goal is something that they would want to do, because it lets other people know that goals are achievable and inspires you to find what you're passionate about and what you can also achieve. So there's there's a perspective about it, whether you love it or you agree with it or whatever it is. There's something that you can draw from it and apply to your own life, I think. So
Yes.
yeah.
And John and Renee are amazing.
Mhm.
Like they're star couple when it comes to, bodybuilding and staying on top of things. Like they just recently went on a vacation and they're both on prep.
Yeah.
And I mean, John's really, really close to his show, like within weeks.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and it's inspiring to me. I was just talking to Luke yesterday about this. That would stress me out so much, having to go on vacation when I'm so close to my show. But
Yeah.
I think that's something that with time you kind of come to learn too in the sport, is how to better
Yeah.
balance things and not stress about, the little things, and how to plan adequately so you don't fall behind.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
think that's something that I definitely need to learn. Because Luke he did a no switch fitness seminar in Tampa,
Mhm.
and this was my first like true traveling while being on prep. And
Okay.
so I felt like I had everything, planned out and fixed, and then my flight was delayed 6 hours, and then you feel like you're not planned
Yeah.
the best, and it worked out,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something that, I need to work on. It's kind
Yeah.
of learning to balance everything, specifically on prep. So,
I think that, John and Renee did this vacation, and I think they did have everything planned, but I think they do their best to mitigate any, curveballs that life throws them. But I bet you that they do still have, you know, those types of things. Like I said, I think their life is set up for the most part, but I think that's the problem with the average person a lot, is they expect, because they have a plan set to, like, on paper, and they're
right.
all in, they're like, well, now this is going to work for me. And it's just like, no, life is still going to try to derail you.
And I know those people that are like, "Oh, well, that happened, we'll just forget it all," like, I'm
Right.
not gonna stick to any of it.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something to learn too, is to decide, like are you 100% all in, or are you just trying to make a lifestyle of this for the long term? And you know what? Eventually you will probably find yourself, like me, being one of those people in your 40s who is like, okay, now what else is going on in my life? It's not
Right.
competing every year, you know?
And that's like, that makes me think of whenever I first started, I really looked up to Nicole Wilkins a good bit,
Mm,
and, as a figure competitor and being on the Olympia stage so many times, and then I followed kind of her over the past year or so being a new mom, and how
yeah.
she transitioned, from having like this, amazing
Yeah.
muscular figure body to now being a mom and still looking amazing and being amazing. And
Yeah.
so you know, I feel like you have to incorporate it into your life, but know that there's going to come a point where you may not get back on stage, and you have to be okay with that. And I'm sure at that time, that can be just like a challenge being in off season. That could be a challenge mentally too. But you have to love yourself through those things. And I
Yeah.
enjoy watching her journey
Yeah.
a good bit.
I think it's really important for people to see that transition as well, how people transition from out of competing as well. Um, Heather, do you follow Heather Dees?
Mm-mm.
Okay, she was a figure competitor the last couple of years, just like, and I believe she is retired now, but she looks amazing. She's going to be on the show. I think I have an interview with her next week,
Uh-huh.
so I'm excited about that too because she was one of my favorites. Kind of like a Ivana Vucic type of a look,
Mhm.
with the dark hair and a beautiful face and very Wonder Woman. So, but there's just a lot of people that are all ages that are, they're so inspirational for different reasons. But I just want to commend you for the information that you're putting out there. Your posts are poignant. You have captions that are provoking, and I just think it just goes back to again that people just need to be really selective with who they follow because you're feeding your brain and you know as much time as we spend on social media, try to have that stuff be meaningful rather than just,
Yeah.
you know, garbage. You
Mhm.
get a lot of garbage. So,
Yeah, and I unfortunately think there is. There's a good mix, in bodybuilding of good and bad.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So, well, is there anything else that you wanted to add to all of this? If not, we will go into a little 10 question
Yeah,
rapid
I think that
fire.
was I think that was pretty good. That was kind of comprehensive, short talks about a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, touched on a lot of really important things that I did want to talk about, and I knew that you were going to be a good person to be having that conversation with. So thank you for, yeah, your insight and being open and everything else. And it's going to be so great just to continue to watch your journey. Emily, what is your Instagram so people can know, or anybody else that you want to promote as well?
So it is InstaFit1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to tell you, this is how my brain is so dumb, but so you know how like you'll like kind of gloss over people's Instagram names, like you'll recognize it, but you don't always read it because it's not necessarily like a word. And at first I was thinking it said M stat, which would have been kind of cool because it's like a doctor.
Oh, that's funny.
But I know like everybody had like, for a while there it was like, I don't know when you created your Instagram, but fit was always at the end.
Yeah, I don't even know, I had a different Instagram name like when I first started
Okay.
Instagram. I don't even remember what it was, but I just changed it to this, and I don't know how I came up with it either, but it's sticking and I guess it's staying.
I read it correctly now, but I was like, first I thought it was M stat, and I was like, that's cool. She's a
I
nurse.
mean, that works too.
So funny. Oh, all right. Well, let's do our top 10 and then we'll close it up. So, music style, country or rock music?
So definitely rock.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I was going to ask you, where are you guys in Texas? Is that where you're living now?
Yeah, we're in Dallas. Or
Okay.
I guess like 20 minutes north of downtown Dallas and Allen.
Okay. Very
Hmm.
nice. Very nice. Okay. Do you have a latest favorite read?
Ooh, I feel like I don't, and that's only because I've been reading so many pediatric like medical study stuff that I just haven't had time to
Yeah,
pick like a solid good book.
that's all right. That's all right. I was going to tell you too that I think it is it's more challenging for you with your job, I'm sure. Are you, is it a 9 to 5 or are you working like 312s like a
Yeah.
lot of?
So I'm in primary care. So my job is pretty cushy. I work part-time. It ends up being like 24 hours a week. Um, and it's either 3 or 4 days a week, just depending on if I do like a half day for
Okay,
2 of the days, or if I do all three, like whole nine to five kind of thing. So
nice.
yeah, it's really easy. It's not, I mean, like normal floor nursing. I am a practitioner, so it's, a little more like critical thinking and challenging because obviously I'm the provider and it requires a little more
Yeah,
responsibility. But
yeah,
overall, it's a very cushy job
yeah.
right now for what I'm doing. So
That's awesome. Well, that makes me happy because I know it's a lot harder, especially if like people in the medical field who are working like three
uh-huh.
twelves. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. All right, dogs or cats?
Ooh, I have both.
You guys have both?
I do. So I have two cats. One's name is Kitty Meow, and then one's name is Finn, and then we have a Frenchie and a pug. The pug's name is JB, and the Frenchie's name is Maggie. And then at the end of the year, we're actually getting a Bernese Mountain Dog,
Oh,
and
wow.
we're gonna name him Chip. So we'll have 5 fur babies. So it's a lot, but we don't have kids, so
Yeah,
it makes it okay.
awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, I don't know. Baby animals or baby humans? What do you prefer?
Probably baby animals, just because I deal with baby humans all the time and they scream.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, with your job.
All the toddlers have white coat syndrome, so I'll come in and they just like look at me and start screaming. And so
It's probably, do you have to wear a mask? It's probably worse.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in an N95, I have my white coat, I have my stethoscope I'm about to stick on your chest.
Oh,
So they don't like it.
it's like ET all over again. For a
Mhm.
minute.
Yes.
All right. Heels or sneakers?
Definitely sneakers.
Yeah.
It's an easy one. Uh-huh. I rarely wear heels. I
But
never
your
very
figure,
rare.
you your figure, you have to.
I know. Okay, so yeah, I guess I do wear heels whenever I do that, which I hate that aspect of figure.
Yeah.
If we could do it like just flat-footed like physique, I would totally go for it.
It's funny because I don't know anyone who's like it bikini competitor or not. Even Janet's, with her last on it, like everybody is just like, oh, I hate, I hate
Mhm.
the
They're
heels.
uncomfortable. My feet get stuffed in them,
Yeah,
especially while I'm still at the beginning of prep when I'm a little fluffy. So yeah, they're no fun.
it's really funny. Hike a mountain or swim in an oasis.
Probably swimming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Burgers, pizza, or sushi.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd have to go with sushi though. So that'll end up probably being my post like cheat meal after Universe. I've
Yeah.
already decided after my Dallas show, I'm doing a giant bowl of oatmeal just because it's my favorite thing. But and then I'll go out to eat after Universe and celebrate. So I'll probably have some sushi.
You'll be like, this one will have the avocado and the mayo sauce because you're
Yeah,
probably
the rice and or the carbs and the fats together. Like what
right.
is this?
It's so funny. It's interesting what you crave or like what you're I haven't done a prep in a long time, but I always liked a big salad with like
Uh-huh.
ranch and cheese and all the eggs, all that stuff is like
Yeah.
that was my favorite. Like,
Mine has been so I'll let everyone in on this. So I have been eating lots and lots of salt. Like to the point to where I'll just dump pink salt into my hand and eat it. So I
what?
mean, I don't even know how much salt I'm intaking a day. And Luke was like, "There's gonna come a time where we have to really watch this, and because we're getting closer, like we have to manage how much salt you're intaking because it's a lot. I mean, it's probably I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe 5 to 7 grams of it a day because I'm putting it on everything,
Yeah.
plus eating it straight out of my hand. I'm going nuts.
Maybe, because I always feel like I crave pickles during prep, so it's the
Uh-huh.
same type of thing. Are you
Maybe
been
that's
eating?
it. It's just the salt.
Yeah, that's really
Mhm.
interesting. And coffee, like, I go ham on coffee. Yeah, it's weird when you get into a dieting mindset, what your body all of a sudden you just
What
wanna.
it wants. Yeah.
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 Super interesting. All right, let's see. Do you have a favorite TV show? What kind of TV do you watch?
So we actually just watched this show called Lupin. It's on
Lupin.
Netflix, and it's about a very fancy thief, and it was really good. So if you haven't watched it, I'd check it out. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. All right, cool. What is your favorite part to train or push pull legs or whatever? What's your favorite?
probably push. I really enjoy my shoulder days.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes it kind of varies through off season. Like I'll have a good couple months where I'm just super excited to train legs,
Yeah.
and then a couple months where I'm just really excited to train back. So it kind of, you know,
Yeah.
goes up and down for me. But overall, I'd say the majority of the time it's going to be my push days.
Awesome. Shoulders are always good. Very good. Okay. All right. What has been your best moment in your life so far?
So probably my honeymoon. Um, so we got married October 4th of 2019, and then that night we drove to New Orleans, spent the night there, and then flew out that next morning and spent the entire week in Hawaii, which was just amazing. And we enjoyed great food and the beach, and we did a little bit of like hiking through there's a big mountain in Maui, and
Yeah,
so we drove that road up there. It was just a fun week.
that's awesome. You know, I sense a couples vacation then for you and John and Renee because, that's her home state.
Yes, yes, it is. That would be great.
That would be cool. All right, we've
Love
plugged
it over
it.
there.
All right. Okay, let's see. Favorite thing about social media, least favorite thing about social media.
So I guess my favorite thing about social media is probably just being able to be up to date on kind of everyone's lives and being able to follow those people that you do enjoy following.
Yeah.
And then the biggest downfall is kind of like what we talked about, seeing a certain thing, but then you don't see the background of that person's life, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of like it can be fake in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. When so you know who Mark Fox is?
Uh-huh.
The guy who creates a lot of the yeah. So I was talking to him a little bit and he was saying how important it is to have posts that are genuine and personal because that's what initially connects people to people, even
Mhm.
if it's not because of a commonality. You just connect with the person who is being vulnerable. So it's just
Yeah.
really interesting to me. I feel like that's easier for me to do as I'm older. And I had told like Melissa Brodsky because she was saying how she wanted to be more open on her social media, but she wasn't really. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, I think it would be harder for me when I was younger because you just feel more vulnerable. Whereas like when you're my age, you're like, probably only going to do
Yeah.
social media
You're
for a
just
few
gonna
more
be
years.
open about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And like I said, you put out really great content. So, yeah, I think that's awesome.
I feel like it was a hard thing for me to really convince myself to start posting on social media. And
Yeah.
I still question before I put everything up. I'm like, does this really matter? Like, do people really want to even see this? And I do it about everything that I post, but
Yeah.
I've gotten better, started to post more than I used to. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can have a little bit of anxiety about it, but there's always delete.
You're right, there is.
So, who would you like to see, or who do you think would be a good person to be interviewed on the podcast? Any
Yeah.
ideas?
So now that we're talking about it, I mean, Renee Gio would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially now that she's, she's in the midst of prep, and this is her, she has her pro card now and she's doing wellness, which is new. So
yeah,
probably some insight on that and how that's going, with kind of everything still being a little up in the air about what they really want wellness to look like.
yeah, yeah. That would be a good one for sure. I know I did ask her at one point, and she was waiting on another podcast interview, and I think just timing wise, it was a few months ago. So I'll ask her one more time, but then I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
I don't want to pester people either, because
yeah, sure.
I figure if they want
They're busy. They are busy, busy people.
I
So
know they are. They are. And she's admitted to being one of those people who like reads messages and isn't sure how to respond. And then so she doesn't. So
yeah.
yeah, which is it's totally fine. So yeah. So all right. Well, Emily, I really appreciate your time. This has been it's been fun and super informative.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciated you asking.
Yeah, for sure. So just let's see. So everybody can find Emily at Emily, or what is it again? It's I'm gonna say
Yes.
Emstat.
Emstafit. So it's EMSTAFIT and then the number 1.
Okay, perfect. You can find me at BuffCake22 at Women's Maximum Fitness, and subscribe, like, follow, share, write a review, hit the 5 stars, all those wonderful things. And remember that healthy looks different on everybody. So have a great day.